Hey there, Sports History fan. Arnie Chapman here from the Sports History Network. Now, before you jump into this episode, I wanted to share with you an exciting giveaway we have going on with Home Field Apparel. We have a digital $50 gift card to homefieldapparel.com for one lucky fan of the Sports History Network. All you got to do is head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways to sign up. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways.
Hello, this is Ross Bliley from the podcast Pigskin Tales. This podcast is sponsored by Sterling Soap Company. With products sold throughout 41 locations around the globe, Sterling Soap Company has a unique assortment of products to choose from for your loved one for the holidays. Handmade artisan soaps created by Roderick and Amanda Lovin since 2012, these products are affordable and provide great value. Act now and save on your shipping costs. If you purchase $75 or more, your shipping cost is free in the United States. Shop now online at sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. Today, me and my friend Dave DePaola will have a discussion on Super Bowl V. Last week we had part 1. This week we will go over part 2.
Yeah, it was. I remember sitting down on the floor. Remember watching that game vividly. When my Uncle Jerry was over the house, my father was in his chair. We were all watching, I remember. And they were talking about, during the game, they were talking about the Bing Crosby golf tournament after the game. Right. Imagine this stuff going on. That was actually, they were bragging about it, saying what a great golf tournament it is. Yeah. So the Super Bowl went on at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And by 4 o'clock, it was all over.
Yeah.
That was it.
I actually didn't even watch the field goal, Dave.
Oh no, you were mad?
I hid. Me and my father and his friend had just built our upstairs. It was used like as an attic.
Yeah.
But it was the type of attic where you could make bedrooms out of it.
Yeah.
So my father and his friend had built, maybe just about a year before, maybe not even, they built a bedroom up there for me and my brother, because my sister took over our original bedroom.
Yep.
So our bedroom was now upstairs. So you had to go up there was a door. So I hid behind the door. I couldn't watch it.
Imagine that.
I went behind the door and closed the door, and I just listened to it. And I heard them say, "The field goal is up and it's good." And I ran up the stairs, and I was devastated.
Oh, I was very upset. I remember being very upset and having to go to school the next day.
Oh, I don't even want to talk about that. Well, I'll get into that. I ran up the stairs. I was so devastated. I remember picking up a pair of scissors. Now there's nobody up there except me. I remember picking up a pair of scissors and throwing them against the wall. And the scissors broke.
Yeah, sure.
And
the scissors were made better back then too, and they still broke.
Yeah. Then going to school the next day, I had I think I was in maybe 3rd grade. And my teacher, she was a female teacher. She was my favorite teacher. And all my years of going to school, she was my favorite teacher. She wasn't married. She was young. She was probably only maybe like 25 years old. Her name was Miss Macia. She was originally from Wisconsin. So she was a Packers fan.
Oh, yeah.
She didn't like the Cowboys.
Oh, no.
The next morning, when I went to school, I walked in the classroom. She had written on the chalkboard, Colts 13, Cowboys, the Colts 16, Cowboys 13. An exclamation point.
Imagine that.
Yeah. She knew I was a big Cowboys fan. She wanted to rub
Yeah.
it in. She wanted to rub it in.
Yeah, Bob Lilly talked about throwing his helmet after that game, and
That's right.
Colt picked it up, and he was a rookie, and he gave it back to him. He called him Mr. Lilly, and he says, Lilly said, I felt about this big.
Yeah.
And I was reading a thread about that just this week when I was watching the game. I started looking at other people's stuff, and one guy actually comes out with the guy's name, the guy that picked the helmet up. Some guy mentions it on there. I should have wrote it down, but the stuff that the people do. But the guy that picked the helmet up, his name was this. The guy says,
right.
I says, but that gets a lot of talk today about that. A lot of people know about him throwing the helmet.
Yeah.
And in fact, Landry, and boy, was he right about this. When they had the Tom Landry Day in 1989, I went down there for that, and Landry was at the podium, and he was talking about Super Bowl V. Right. And he says, I remember Bob Lilly took his helmet off, he said, and threw it as far down. He threw it further than our passer could throw the ball that day. I'm thinking of him as a boy, is he right about that? Craig Morton just looked I know. He would have never put Staubach into the game. Okay? That would have probably never, ever happened. That just wasn't Tom Landry. But if you go back and look, Mark, and I was looking at it earlier, you could see that they were only passing really the Cowboys when absolutely need be. I went back and looked at the 49er game, the championship game that got them to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Okay. And Morton was once again, under 50%. He was 7 out of 22. That's unbelievably terrible. For 101 yards, 1 touchdown. Okay. No interceptions, thank God. They probably would have lost that game. 7 out of 22. What is it? It's not even 40%, I don't think. But and if you go back to the week before that game, their first playoff game was against the Lions, 5-0. Yeah. They ended up winning that game against the Lions, which is absolutely unheard of. Tell somebody they won a playoff game today, 5-0. They wouldn't even believe you.
Yeah.
Morton was 4 for 18.
Yep.
For 38 yards for a 16.4 passer rating. That's absolutely pathetic. Okay?
Yep. So he had the bad shoulder. Well, I forgot. Not only bad shoulder, but he had a bad elbow too.
Yes. One of the announcers was talking about it during the game.
So let's try to analyze. I mean, why do you think Landry at no point in any of those 3 games did Staubach come in for even one play? Not even one play.
No. I would have to go back and look at that entire season. I'm wondering, I know Staubach did play that year, though. Didn't he play in a couple of games?
Yes, he got some playing time. Yes.
Yes, he did.
But in the playoff game, he never got it down. The championship game against the 49ers, he never got in the game. And the Super Bowl, he never got in the game.
No. They had a great running game. They had Dwayne Thomas, who was a rookie that year. But, they talked about it early in the game. Landry had already boasted that he was saying that Dwayne Thomas is the best running back the Cowboys have ever had up to that point.
Yeah.
That was mentioned in the telecast of this game.
Yes. Now, it wasn't just Landry, because a lot of coaches were, at that time, you have to remember how different. I mean, it was a running game. It wasn't a passing game like it is today, right?
No, nothing like it is today. Not even close.
It was a running game. The Cowboys, at least during that season, 1970, they had the best running game in the entire NFL, right?
Yeah. Calvin Hill was hurt, correct?
He played, he was in and out. He had injuries, but he he played some of that season. So they had Walt Garrison, they had Calvin Hill, they had Dwayne Thomas, and I know they led the league in rushing.
Yes, listen, Calvin Hill, think about this. They took Calvin Hill in the first round in 69. Then they drafted Dwayne Thomas in the first round in 69. And Calvin Hill came out of Yale. It was rare. You didn't see a lot of Ivy League players back then. But and he was big, Calvin Hill. Yeah. He was about 6'3", I think, or 6'2" at least. And he was about 225 pounds at least, maybe more.
230 at least.
Yes.
And Dwayne Thomas was about 225.
Yes, Dwayne Thomas was, but two completely different running styles.
Yep, very different. But they led the league in rushing. So if I had, if somebody asked me why didn't Landry put Staubach in, I would have to say 3 reasons. Well, number one, we know he didn't like a scrambling quarterback.
No,
right?
Exactly.
He didn't go for that. And not many coaches did at that time. During the 1960s, there wasn't any scrambling quarterbacks. You stayed in the pocket.
Yeah.
So
maybe Tarkington was maybe the first one. Maybe
he was probably the only one, and he was criticized for it at the beginning of his career. Then, like I said, they had the best running game in football. We already talked about how outstanding their defense was playing. So,
I looked at Staubach's stats here. For the 1970 season, he played in 8 games.
Yep.
And he had 44 completions, 82 attempts for a 53.7 completion percentage, 542 yards, 2 touchdowns. But here's the thing. 2 touchdowns, 8 interceptions.
Wow. 8
interceptions. Okay. Yeah. Ran the ball. I think that's what's but okay, he also had rushing yardage. Mm-hmm. And in 1970, he gained 221 yards on the ground, Staubach. Pretty good.
That's a lot for only
yards per attempt. He was averaging 27 yards a game rushing.
Oh.
8 yards per attempt in 1970. So Landry thought he might have been maybe a little reckless. Maybe he couldn't trust him but Craig Morton was not good. I mean, he was really, really, I just explained it to you, the 16% per, I never heard of such a passer rating so low. He was brutal.
Well, you mentioned Joe Namath before, that he was on the pregame show.
That's right.
And I'm sure, and you can't totally blame Landry because they were winning,
Yes, and they were.
That's how coaches were then. If you're winning, you're not going to change anything. You keep doing what you were doing. Their defense was playing great, and they had the best running game in all of football. So I think Landry was just so confident in their running game. But you mentioned Joe Namath, and he called it before the game. He called it in the pregame show. He said they're not going to be able to run on the Colts. Namath said that. They were
not
he did.
able
to run on the Colts.
And he actually questioned Morton's effectiveness.
Right.
In that little pre-game interview. That was about like it was a fairly long pre-game thing with Namath. That was pretty long.
Yeah. Namath hit the nail on the head. He called it, said they're not going to be able to run. What was Dwayne Thomas's stats were not good.
No, Dwayne Thomas, who was having, he had an excellent day against the 49ers the week before.
And the Lions.
Yeah. He wasn't, he wasn't as effective. You're right. Walt Garrison ripped off a couple of pretty good runs. You know that?
Yeah, he had some good runs.
Yeah, Thomas, I'll look him up now. He was
Wasn't good. His stats weren't good.
no, his 70 season. Okay, he played 14 games in 1970. Dwayne Thomas. He started 8 of them. Okay, he averaged 5.3 yards per carry. That's very, very good, especially for a rookie.
Yeah.
You know,
He had a great rookie season.
no, he was really. It was very sad, you know, what happened there with Dwayne Thomas. But you know, Calvin Hill never really got into the Super Bowl. I think he was hurt. He didn't play at all. That came in that game, Mark. I don't think at all.
In the Colts game, he didn't play at all?
No, I don't think so.
I think you might be right.
I don't think he played.
He played against the 49ers, right? He must have got hurt in the championship game.
Yeah, he had a very, very reckless style of running, Calvin Hill. And even though he was a big guy, he was prone to getting injured. His son was the same way, you know, in basketball. Same deal.
Grant, I think his name was Grant, right?
Yeah, Grant Hill. Yep, same thing. He was hurt like that, but I'm looking at it now. Bob Hayes. I'm looking at the players here, passing and rushing. Dwayne Thomas. Here we go. The Cowboys only had, they had 102 yards rushing total, 31 attempts for 102. The Colts had 69 on the ground. Right. Exact same amount of attempts, by the way, 31. Right. You know, Morton was 12 for 26. And the Colts combined passing they only had 11 completions, 11 for 25, almost identical, but they had 260 yards. Of course, 75 of them were on that one play.
All right.
So you take away that play, and they're down to about 170, about 180 yards around there. Yeah. Still better than the Cowboys, though.
Right.
And Dwayne Thomas was 18 for 35. Yeah. 18 rushing attempts, 35 yards.
2 yards a carry.
Yeah, 3 yards below his season average.
Yeah.
So they did shut him down.
They did, and Namath called it. Namath said they're not going to be able to run the ball on the Colts.
We talked about Walt Garrison earlier. He was 12 for 65, Mark. 12 for 65, pretty good.
I wonder why they didn't give him the ball more.
Yeah, nobody else ran. Nothing else. Dan Reeves didn't get any carries. He did catch a couple of balls, Reeves.
Yeah.
But Reeves did catch. Reeves caught 5 for 46.
Right.
Not too bad. Dwayne Thomas had 4 catches in his defense. 4 catches for 21 yards, and Walt Garrison had 2 more. Walt Garrison was pretty good. Had a pretty good game that game.
Yeah. You know, I wonder some of that whole situation with Dwayne Thomas the following year where he wouldn't talk to anybody.
Yes.
They wouldn't do anything with his contract, even though he had Rookie of the Year, right? He won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder if his game against the Colts was part of that. You know, they used that against him.
You don't know.
That they said, you know, you had a lousy game in the Super Bowl and you fumbled. You had a costly fumble. I wonder if they used that against them.
They could have. It was kind of costly. And that game, by the way, the Super Bowl game, it started at 1:50. So it went on the game started about almost 2 o'clock. I was wrong about the 1 o'clock start, but I think the pregame started at like 12 noon. They didn't have these 4-hour pregames like they have today, 5 hours. It was like about an hour and a half, 2 hours, tops.
By the time they get in today's Super Bowl, by the time they get to halftime, you're starting to fall asleep already. It's so late.
Listen, I don't even watch the halftimes. We have our own entertainment here. I can't take it anymore. But it was 60 degrees, you know, that day in Miami. And the Colts were giving them. Colts were 2.5 point favorites.
Yep.
2.5 point favorites. The Cowboys, the over-under in that game was 36. Imagine that. It's all unheard of today.
Yeah.
And it was way under.
Yeah, way under.
You know what I mean?
The Cowboys had 2,300 yards rushing in 1970 in a 14-game season. 2,300 yards rushing. They led the league. They led the league in rushing. They gained 209 yards rushing against the Lions. They gained 229 yards against the 49ers in the championship game.
Yes, that was a big day on the ground. I remember that.
It was a huge difference. 209 yards, then 229 yards, and then against the Colts they had 100 yards.
102, yep.
Looking at my notes here. Thomas took over. Thomas did not become the starter until week 6. And that's when Calvin Hill got injured in week 6. Walt Garrison and Calvin Hill were the starters. And Calvin Hill got injured in week 6.
Yeah.
Thomas took over. He gained over. He had a great game. Both of those playoffs against the Lions, he had over 100 yards. Against the 49ers, he had over 100 yards.
Yeah.
And then against the Colts, he had 35 yards. So, I mean, you got to give the Colts defense credit.
No, they got tough. They really dug in the second half. They really did. I mean, I look at the Colts stats. They really didn't have anything outstanding at all. I mean, Nowatzki and Bulash, those were their two main running backs. Neither of them had any speed, or they were just 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Tom Brady was their main running back.
He was hurt. That's right.
He was out for most of the season.
10 for 33 for Nowatzki, 18 for 28 for Bulash.
Terrible.
Okay, there's nothing to brag about there.
No.
And in the receiving department, I'm looking at these guys receiving. Roy Jefferson was the leading receiver with 3 catches.
Yeah.
For 52 yards. And John Mackey was the second leading receiver with 80, but 75 was on that crazy play.
Yep.
Eddie Hinton and Roy Jefferson made up the most of the 5 catches between the two of them for 103 yards. That was the brunt of their passing game right there.
Yeah. Yeah, both defenses played a great game.
And something? Here's another thing that gets a little overlooked. Nobody ever talks about it. Mike Ditka wasn't even a part of this game. He didn't have a single reception.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Mike Ditka, nothing.
Not one.
Terrible. Imagine that.
Well, I know. I'm sure they used him for blocking. He was a good blocker, but that's surprising that he didn't even have one catch.
A Hall of Fame guy, no catches in a Super Bowl game.
Was Billy Truax on that team? Or no?
He wasn't. Yeah.
No, the following.
No, that was the following year, I think, right?
What was? I can't remember his name. Pettis Norman.
Yes, Norman. I saw Norman going into the game. He was going in and out with the plays. He was on the team. Yes.
He was a tight end, right?
Yeah, he didn't have anything either.
Wow.
Nothing.
I think him and Ditka alternated. They
did.
Bring the plays in and out.
Yeah. The Cowboys had a lot of pressure on. Didn't seem to affect Morrill, but they had no sacks in this game.
Wow, with all the pressure they put on them, they had no sacks.
Yep, Morton got sacked twice for 14 yards.
Wow, that's surprising. Only 2 sacks in the whole game.
Yep, imagine that.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
No. The Cowboys' offense was stagnant. Just a total of 215 yards total.
Yeah, good. Not good.
The Cowboys lost a fumble. The Colts had 5 fumbles and lost 4 of them.
Wow.
The Colts had 7 turnovers, and the Cowboys cannot win this game. And the Cowboys, by the way, I said this was a record, I think, for the season. The Cowboys had 10 penalties for 133 yards.
That's a lot. That's terrible.
Imagine that.
Terrible.
That wasn't really like Landry's teams either.
Yeah. But I think Landry, it's easy to say he should have put Staubach in, but they won 7 games in a row with
No,
more.
exactly. I know exactly what you're saying. It wasn't in the makeup
Right.
of a coach or a team back then to just start throwing quarterbacks in and out like they do today.
Yeah. They won 7 games in a row with Morton at quarterback.
Yeah, there was a reason why a guy was designated a starter, and pretty much, other than maybe injury, they didn't come out of games, really.
But he was injured, so
Yeah.
he just I don't think Landry really expected that. I think he expected the running game was gonna do it, was gonna win the game for him.
I agree with you. I it was a kind of a letdown. The Colts stopped. I guess maybe they knew, and they said, "Look at Morton. Look
Yeah.
at those games I talked about. Look at those 2 playoff games they took. Well, if we could stop the Cowboys' run,
Yeah.
we'll force this Salam to beat us." And he couldn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrible.
They keyed on the run.
Looking back at it now, you can't believe that the Giants gave up a first-round pick for that guy, and we got Randy White because of him.
Yeah.
Imagine how about that?
That turned out well.
If you want to take it a couple of years ahead, they actually gave up a first-round pick for Craig Morton.
Yeah.
And of course, they played against him twice a year, so maybe they had a different look at it. And we ended up getting Randy White for him.
That wound up turning out really well.
So that was good, Mark. I'm glad we did that. Next week's the Super Bowl coming up, and I'll probably watch it. I haven't missed a Super Bowl game in many. I can't remember the last time I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I don't think ever. Super Bowl 4 was my first that I watched the whole game. I remember that.
Me too. Both 4 Chiefs and Vikings.
Yes, and I've watched them ever since. Not enjoying many of them. Some of them were just terrible. There was a stretch of games there. I can't remember how, but they were atrocious. All blowouts.
Yep. I think
but
I think this will be the 4th. I think this will be the 4th year in a row of me not watching the Super Bowl.
Listen, I don't blame you. I'm going to tell you this. If Baltimore got in and it was the Chiefs, it was going to be Baltimore against the Eagles, I wasn't having any. And the main reason why I watch them is I have some friends come over.
Right.
And it's been kind of a tradition.
Yeah.
So we do watch them, and it's not a lot of guys, 5 or 6 people. That the house is small, the living room is not that big, but
yeah,
we watch them and we have fun. We have football pools. We see who's getting after the first quarter, sexy, won a little money, but they've been entertaining. I got to say, some of the recent ones have been pretty good, and I kind of expect. I think Philadelphia has a better lineup.
Yeah,
and I think they have a better. They definitely have a better running game. Barkley's outstanding. But with all that being said, I have a funny feeling the Chiefs are going to win. I just do.
Well, I don't follow it, but from what I understand, from what I've read, a lot of people say that the referees are on the Chiefs' side.
Well, they used to talk about that when the Patriots were on a run. And they used to talk about how Brady would get all the calls, and he did get a lot of calls. It's funny that now that he's announcing, he can't believe some of the stuff. He benefited from all this stuff. He's talking about it on TV. Yeah. Anyway, I don't even know who's broadcasting. I don't know if it's CBS or NBC or Fox. I think it's Fox,
Right.
So that means it'll be Brady, I guess, doing the game, which I'm not very fond of his. Just as a voice, I'm not really fond of it, the tone of it and everything. I really liked Greg Olson. Greg Olson used to be the tight end for the Carolina Panthers. He was, and he's still on, but he's been reduced to like the second tier games. But I really liked Greg Olson a lot. I still like him a lot. I wish he was doing the game. Maybe they'll bring him in as a third guy for this game. I'm not sure, but he was very, very good, and everything's changed dramatically. Even the studio, Jimmy Johnson's in the studio. I'm sure he'll be there for the game if Fox is doing it. I thought they were doing it. I'm not 100% sure, but if it was CBS, it would be Romo. Right. But I think they had it last year. I can't remember, but regardless, I'll watch it, and it'll be. I'll be kind of pulling a hope. I'll be rooting for I just can't stand the coach of the Eagles. The guy gets under my skin.
Oh, who's the coach?
I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's just a guy. He's very confrontational. He's yelling at players on the other teams. He's yelling at fans.
Yeah.
He's just. There was even a time where some of the players from the Eagles were expressing their.
Right.
They weren't crazy about it. But now that everything's going well, you're not going to hear that. But there was a period where they, but we'll see what ends up happening. And not like the old days, though, Mark. I'll tell you that.
No. Well, as long as you're still, you have your friends there. As long as you enjoy it, then, you make a day of it. But I can't watch it anymore.
It's tough to watch.
Yeah.
There's the stoppages, especially in the Super Bowl, the halftime is long. There's so many commercials during the game.
Yeah.
You can't really get into a flow of the game.
No, it's not about the game anymore. It's about everything else.
During that Colt Cowboy game, the one we just talked about, I think it was Kurt Gowdy who brought it up. And he was talking about the being broadcast around the world on armed forces and this and this. And he said being broadcast in Alaska. And I'm thinking, if you think about it, Alaska was a state in 1959. Alaska had only been a state at that time for 11 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I went up to Alaska in 2004. I spent about a month up there.
Right.
It's quite a state. It's quite bigger than people even realize. It's, with the inside passage and the Aleutian Islands on the other end, if you brought it down to the lower 48, it would stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. That's how big it is.
Wow.
But people don't understand that. But I could see that being a big thing back then, because it was so remote kind of still. And it had only been a state for 11 years.
Yeah.
But he was talking about that, Kurt Gowdy.
Yeah, it was a big thing back then.
So it's a Super Bowl V, and it's been, I don't know, you may have watched the same rebroadcast, but the guy refurbished the whole thing. It's very clear.
Did an amazing job.
Any Cowboy fan should look that up and watch that, because it's a great, great game to watch.
You would never know by looking at after he refurbished, you'd never know that game was 55 years old.
No, it's outstanding.
Amazing.
Outstanding.
Yeah. The color is perfect.
There's some plays in the fourth quarter, I think, where he's only got the radio.
Right.
Well, he's got the Super Bowl audio, of the TV audio.
Yeah.
For some reason that you mustn't be able to get the plays.
Yeah, they're missing. Yep.
That's it, Mark.
Yeah. Well, that was enjoyable, even though it was painful to relive it.
No, I haven't. Speaking of reliving things, I haven't talked to Arnie. I emailed him the day before the playoff game that the Lions were in. I wished him good luck.
Yeah.
I said, I'll be thinking about you tomorrow. And then they got killed. I haven't talked to him since. It's, I'm not laughing, but it's funny. After the game was over, I said, boy, Arnie must be kind of mad, huh?
Yeah. He said he was away on business.
He must have been watching it, though.
Yeah, he watched it, but I don't know. Do you think? I mean, if they beat the who'd they play? The Redskins?
Something happened. They just looked like they just went into the tank.
If they beat the Redskins, do you think they would have? You think they were good enough to beat the Eagles?
I thought all season long they could have beat the Eagles.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, the Lions' defense started to fade.
Right.
But then they played, I think, they played somebody, the game that they played right before the Redskin game.
Right.
Their defense was, I was very concerned about it, and their defense looked good.
Yeah.
I can't think of who they played that week, but I said, boy, I got hope for the Lions again. They looked sharp. And it's almost like the next week, it was like a different team on the field.
Yeah. Wow.
They didn't look good, Mark. They I don't know if they came out flat. I don't know what the hell was going on, but the Cowboys, as terrible as they were this year, they played the Redskins. They could have beat the Redskins twice. So I didn't think much of the Redskins, I'm going to be honest with you. I never thought they'd end up in the NFC Championship game.
Right.
Man. But give them credit. They did. Dan Quinn, who was coaching the Cowboys 2 years ago, goes to the Redskins and brings them to the NFC Championship game. And you got to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah.
They got a good receiving core of the Redskins, and their defense played pretty good. The Lions looked terrible. I mean, I don't know what the hell happened. You could see the coach was like bewildered in the third and fourth quarter. You could see the look on his face.
Right.
I like Dan Campbell, too. I like him as a coach. I wish the Cowboys had gotten someone like him. They ended up with Marty Schottenheimer's kid. I don't know if you followed that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They picked up, Brian Schottenheimer. He was an assistant with them last year.
Right.
So when McCarthy's gone, a lot of people were not happy with that. But, I watched some of the old timers, Mickey Spagnola, and I watched Ed Werder.
Yeah.
He's been around a long time. And they watch some of the other guys, and they're saying, you got to at least give the guy a chance.
Right.
He's never been a head coach.
Yeah.
They're saying, once again, it's going to be just one of Jerry's puppets, talking about all that kind of stuff. Jerry's losing his mind. What the hell is he doing? But they're saying, he brought the past week, I think, I didn't watch any of the videos yet, but I'm going to. By all accounts, I think he brought in some very good assistant coaches, I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so that will help him. But, I'll see what happens. But it was good to come on with you today, Mark. That was fun.
Well, years ago, I guess it's always been that way with coaches. They come and they go. They don't. A lot of the owners don't have enough patience to stick with them. But you look at the two teams that had patience to stick with their coaches. That was the Cowboys and Steelers, right?
Yes, they did all those years. Yes.
Yeah, because Chuck Noll.
That's right.
Chuck Noll. You look at his first few seasons; they didn't do well.
No.
They stuck with him. And Tom Landry, same thing. Look at Tom Landry's first 4 or 5 seasons; they were terrible.
No, you're right. And, there were coaches back then that say, look at Bud Grant. He was there a long time.
Yep.
There's guys that did hang around a long time. Some Lou Shula was there forever.
Yeah.
There were some great coaches. Al Davis was around for a while. But what the problem is today? The money, it's a completely different atmosphere. The money is too big. There's too much at stake. And what ends up happening is it's the old saying, the inmates are running the asylum. Yeah. The players are running the teams, really. If a coach loses that locker room and the players don't want to play for him anymore, it's over.
Yeah.
You got to get rid of the coach, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
the players that's what ends up being happening.
Yeah.
And then the fans start to get restless.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, the thing is with the Cowboys, they have such a following that they'll never, ever have. Well, it happened at the end of the Landry area where the stadium was barely half full.
Yeah.
I went to a lot of those games in the late 80s, 86, 87, 85. Tickets were easy to get because they weren't that good of a team. And so I started going down more often. And the stadium was half full, 3/4 full. That's when the ownership, but that will never happen. Even in that big stadium that they have, there'll always be somebody that wants to go to those games.
Right. Yeah.
Every week there's tens of thousands of standing room only fans in that Cowboy stadium. They're standing and they watch in the lobby. There's screens, and some of them are standing in the second level, right behind your seats.
Right.
But the problem is they can't move. If they move, somebody takes their spot. But they'll never get hurt that way, is what I'm saying. So that's a problem if you're putting out a rotten product.
Yeah.
Look, right now in the NFC, the Cowboys, they're the longest standing team that hasn't been to the NFC Championship. 30 years. The Redskins had them beat, but they went to the championship game. Now it's the Cowboys. Who would ever thought it would come down to that? 30 years of not making an NFC Championship. It's a disgrace. I'm sorry.
It is unbelievable.
And I've had it with Jerry. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sick of him. I'm sick of his garbage now.
Yeah.
But how do you not get to the championship game in 30 years? You had good teams. It's not like they don't have talent there. They got talent. There's something wrong. There's some kind of cultural problem. Something's wrong somewhere. I don't know what it is, Mark, but something's wrong.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Not good.
They've had some good teams, so there's no excuse. 30 years. Never would have expected that with the Dallas Cowboys.
It's unbelievable, Mark. It's unbelievable. It's a disgrace. I'll say it again. You can't even, and it's just, I don't know if it's the fact that the players can get around the head coach in that organization. They look like, in other words, the head coach, probably Parcells was the last one.
Right.
Who might have had, as far as players go, maybe the final say on things.
Right.
And since then, no. Wade Phillips, no. You know what I mean? Jason Garrett, no. Even McCarthy, he was a seasoned coach. He had a very good record, won a Super Bowl, playoff games, everything. But the players know they could get around him. You can't. I don't think you can have that. I don't think you can have that.
No, it's a little different.
So if Arnie watches this, Mark, or he's listening to it, if ends up listening to what he does, I'm sorry about those Lions. I was actually pulling for him.
Yeah.
I would like to see him. I would have liked to see him go all the way. Really.
Yeah. Never been to a Super Bowl.
It's very fun. The finality of the football season, it comes and goes quick. It goes much faster than a baseball season or, even hockey or basketball. But it comes, and then before you know it, it's week 14. Then it's the playoffs. Then it's over.
Yeah.
And things end quickly, you know what I mean? And, just like any other sport, only one team could win. So that's the way it goes. But to not go for 30 years, there's something systemically wrong to me.
Gotta be. That's a long time.
All right, Mark. Well, till next time, buddy. It's been fun.
Okay.
It's fun to relive that old Super Bowl.
It was fun and painful.
Yes, sir.
But
all right.
At least they won the following year, right, against the Dolphins.
Yeah. That was a little. Yeah, that was pretty good. 24-3, they pulled it out.
Yeah.
They called that almost a perfect game. Lily said it was probably the most perfect game we ever played.
Yeah, I think Don Shula said that, right?
He said it too, yes, exactly.
He said you just saw a team play a perfect game.
They did. They really bottled up the Dolphins' defense there. They had them coming and going.
Yeah.
A lot of misdirection in that game and a lot of very good running game.
That's right.
And then Ditka got in. Ditka caught a touchdown. So Lance Allworth caught a touchdown. Here's where these guys they were getting from other teams, which was rare. And they both had 10 touchdowns in that game. Imagine that?
Yeah, and they were both at the end of their career.
Exactly.
Great.
Maybe we'll do one on that game sometime.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yep.
All right.
All right, Mark. Enjoy the weekend, buddy.
You too.
All right. You take care of yourself. God bless you.
You too. God bless.
Thank you, Mark. I'll see you again.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That will conclude our podcast on Super Bowl 5 between the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Colts. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and God bless.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.